My grandparents, they were actually, on my mom's side, they were from Hungary. And not a lot of people learn about Hungary in school, but the the war, the World War, really affected them. And after the war was over, Russia occupied Hungary. And it was kind of a totalitarian dictatorship. And so what they went through was horrible, horrible things. Things that, like, my grandma was on a bus when she was like 12 years old or 11 years old, and she was on the train with her neighbor. It was a train, sorry. And like a bomb went off and hit the other train, and a piece of shrapnel came and just killed her neighbor right next to her, and she had to go home and tell their family. And it's just experienced really horrible things, where they had to leave the country. And it was like an underground railroad, in a sense of like having to leave a place that it was illegal to leave. And she had to do that with my mom, who was like 8 years old at the time. And it was just a horrific, a horrific time for everybody. But my grandparents were very hurt by the church at that point. They saw a lot of the church let them down, but they never lost faith in God. And I think that's because, when your life is on the line so much, it's hard not to call out and to have that like reaching. And so they had to, they prayed, and they had faith, but they developed this kind of like crude and dark sense of humor, where they would laugh about, like, the dark things, because that's kind of how you cope sometimes when you have a dark history. So they were able to kind of laugh off some things. And contrary to that, they came to the US, and they had my grandfather was kind of a savant and like an electrical engineer, and he was very good at fixing things. But when he came to the United States as a refugee, and didn't really speak much English, he only spoke Russian or a German, or his home Hungarian. And so he could only get a job as a janitor in the hospital that his brother worked at. And so he would joke with my grandma about stuff like, oh yeah, I got promoted today. I was cleaning a toilet on the first floor, and now I am cleaning a toilet on a second floor. So it was these little like jokes to deal with stuff. So I wanted to bring that up because I think it's pretty foundational, because my whole life growing up, I heard their stories, every Sunday. Every time we'd go over to their house, I would hear these like really faith driven stories, these steps like that they had to take to get out of a situation that was so horrible. And just to finish that story, my grandfather actually, when a generator broke at that hospital, his brother said, oh, Laszlo can fix it. And he did. And he went in and he fixed the generator that nobody else could fix. And he became the lead engineer and, stayed with that company his whole life. So really, really neat people. And contrary to that, on my father's side, I had a very generous family with kind of a small fortune, not too much money, but enough, So in my life, I was very fortunate in my upbringing. I had, we went on vacations, and we did a lot of fun things. I was never like deprived. If I asked for something and I didn't get it, I would get it on Christmas. There was like a lot of like generosity there. But my father started, he was a very tall man, and he started to decline in his health. He had a lot of health issues, and he started to take muscle relaxers and pain pills. He was 6'6", and he had a lot of back and knee, and they said he had no cartilage in his knee, and so just going to work for him was hard. And he would come home, and he had a very fun personality, but what I remember most is just him, you know, sleeping on the couch, just kind of incoherent. And so my mom and my brother, they started to really hound him to stop his addiction. And at that time, I was a teenager, and I was starting to just rebel a little bit. My parents, you know, I said they gave me all these things, but they also were very busy, and they worked a lot. And I didn't have any like, I didn't have too much restrictions. So like I could have people over, and I started smoking cigarettes, and I started drinking and trying out marijuana, and, you know, just got involved with some people that were also kind of like hurting and needing, like having a lack of I guess love. Not that I knew that they loved me, but it wasn't, there's a difference between being present and in love and just loving, you know. And so we were raised, they raised me Roman Catholic, and I did like make my confirmation and everything. And I actually got this, this book. This was one of the books I actually ordered from Amazon. I was able to replace it. So somebody, I don't even remember who, but somebody got me this Precious Moments, Little Prayers for Boys and Girls when I was younger. And I had it in a very special place on my nightstand, and every once in a while I would open it up and look at it. I was never encouraged to read it. Nobody really like said anything about it. I was just given it on my confirmation, and then it just stayed in my drawer. And I would get it out and read it from time to time. So yeah. So I was starting to dabble off. And then my father used to take me driving. So he used to take me when I was 14 and 15 years old to this little developing area. And, you know, they were building these businesses and stuff in this area. And he would take me to practice driving there. And when I was 15 years old, I woke up one morning to my mom and my brother, you know, profusely crying. And I don't know if, you know, when you lose somebody and you wake up to that news, it's like your world comes crashing down. So I woke up and I heard my father had committed suicide. And he had shot himself. And so he had struggled before that with like rehab, and he had just, I want to backtrack just a little bit, because he went into rehab and he overdosed and went into rehab. And then he overdosed again and was in the hospital. And when I was 14 or 15, I didn't go and visit him. And in my family, it was kind of like, we were kind of like, if you did something wrong, we would like punish you by withholding love. That was kind of like the standard practice in our home. So I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And when my father got home from the hospital after his overdose, this is right before his suicide, he got home from the hospital and I saw my grandpa first, and I said, "Oh, grandpa," and I gave him a big hug and I said, "Oh, it's good to see you." And then I saw my dad and I didn't know what to do. I thought, should I hug him? Should I withhold? Am I punishing him? Are we punishing him? I didn't know, because my family was so, um, confusing for a little kid. So I just said, "Hi, Dad," and I didn't hug him or anything. And I brought that up because that moment is something that God redeemed, but I held with me for a long time. So I'll come back to that. But so when I found out that he had killed himself, I had questions, and obviously you're just crying and you don't know what to do. But then you talk about it, and how did it happen? Where did it happen? And it happened in the place that he had taken me driving. And so the whole time I was just thinking, like, was that what he was thinking about? He wasn't thinking about teaching me to drive. He was planning his suicide and using me, to think that out. So I drove there. They told me about like where it had happened, and I drove there and I parked and I just, got out and tried to feel, and or see, and I walked over and I actually found the pools of blood on the dirt, and I just stood there, and you could it was like sweet smelling, and there was bees flying around, and I just didn't know what to do. My heart was totally empty. It was like a fire had like burned through it, and it was just dark. It's like a void. And so I just went about my day, and I remember, like, you really see kind of who people are. People show you who they are, like in circumstances like that. And I remember somebody from school calling me that same day and being like, "Oh, I heard your dad blew his brains out. Is that true?" And I was like, "Yes." "Okay. Bye." And I laugh at it now. The audacity of it is just, it's intense. And I faced a lot of judgment after that too. I went over to a friend's house because I just didn't know what to do. I was just frozen. And I remember people being like, Jamie didn't even care that her dad died. She went over to Mohammed's house that same day. So there was a lot of judgment that I had to take on and sift through during a hard time. I also had a lot of people really show up for me too, writing letters and cards, and people that showed up for the funeral. And so there's a lot of good that people showed me in their hearts then too. But so after that, I really kind of went down a downward spiral where, I wrote my own suicide letters. I would drive and think about, like, what if I just turn? Ultimately, I didn't want that, and I didn't want to hurt my family like he had hurt us. So I just went about suffering. And I told you guys there was a moment the same night that my father killed himself that I felt a breeze come in, like a peaceful breeze come over me, And I felt like that gave me some sort of strength to go through like the funeral and everything. But you know, if you ever lost somebody, it's like the holidays that hit you really hard after. And so, like, it was my 16th birthday. And, coming from having a lot of things when you were young, and then when you turn 16, it was like I was supposed to have this sweet 16, and my dad was going to get me a car, like a beater car, but like a car. and and so when I turned 16, um, they had a party for me and everything, but I remember all day just crying in my room, because you realize, they're not there. They're supposed to be there. And so I had to mourn like the life that I thought I was going to have too. So not only my father, but, you know, the hopes that I had, or just the car, or the party, or it was different. And so I mourned that. And I remember getting really kind of dark, stealing. I remember I would just walk into a store and just steal whatever I wanted. And it almost became prideful too. Like, look at what I can do and I won't get caught. And I had a group of friends that, they were also hurting in their own ways. And so we would pass around guys, and like, I would steal a guy from one of my friends, and then she would steal a guy from me. And it was almost this like, this power, or like, trying to search for inner worth or value, like my value, because I was so empty. And so if I thought like, well, if I can get this person to like me, maybe that means I'm worth something. Or yeah. And so it even became where my group of friends, they nicknamed us the evil circle. And I remember one time we actually had a seance. We had a little seance, and we sat on my pool table, and we brought up this one girl that we didn't like. And the next day, she came to school with crutches, and it scared the shit out of us. And so we decided, in a sense, to start telling each other the truth, and to like about the cheating and about the things like that. I mean, but I was really searching. I was really searching for answers, and I really wanted the truth. And an important point to bring up too is that after my father died, that week after the funeral, the Catholic priest had told us that my father would be in hell, because he did this. And it was something that really broke me. I couldn't accept it. And so I turned away from the church. I still believed in God, but I kind of felt abandoned, not only by my dad, but by God, or by the church. I just didn't know. And so I still believed in God. And this is really kind of an important moment because I was maintaining my schoolwork in a sense. I always had kind of a wanting to prove myself through school. So I did have good grades until a brief period when my father died and I wanted to get into the alternative school. So I let my grades drop then, but I picked them back up and I cared about school, which is kind of funny because like, somebody who's really raging out in this other area, I still tried to maintain that. And I knew that this one project was really important, and I hadn't done it because I don't know, was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. But so I prayed, and I said, God, if you're real and you can do this, I really need help because I don't have this project to turn in. And I don't know, but if school can somehow close tomorrow, I would really appreciate it. And so I went to bed. I hadn't finished my project. I think I started to work on it and fell asleep or something. And the next morning, I woke up to a very surprise snowstorm, like a huge snowstorm that had just surprisingly came upon our town, and the power got knocked out, and it was knocked out for days after that, and the school was closed, and then our sub pump broke and our basement overflowed. like, and so it was like I'm not only like, wow, you answer prayers, but like, wow, you're powerful. And I have to be careful, like with what I ask you. And so it really it was like a knowing came upon me that I knew he was real and I knew he was listening. And I just didn't know how to get to him. And so I started to search out more new age paths, and I got into like chakra breathing and trying to just, I don't know, search these alternate routes. And I had a moment where things got really bad, and my boyfriend at the time, I could tell he was not being honest with me. You know how you kind of have an inkling that somebody's not being honest with you, and then they kind of deny it, but the spirit wrestles with you, and it tells you, even though you don't want to believe it. And at that point, I was like just really wanting truth. And I had a moment by this little river after a rumor arose about my ex cheating again. And I I said to God, like, I just want truth. And I want it more than love. Like, I don't want the fake love. I want truth. And I really put that desire out there. And, I stepped back in. I wanted to believe. Still, I wasn't sure. My ex and I had this back and forth of like, do I believe him? Do I don't? So I still wasn't ready fully to let him go. And I told you guys a couple things throughout my life. I've seen different little visions and whatnot, and I've seen really dark. And then I had that moment, that beautiful moment with God, where he revealed his light to me and his love for me. And I was sold, but I just didn't know how to get there, how to I guess I didn't understand like how to be sanctified or what that even means, you know. I didn't know the Bible. I had this little like these little books, but I was so hurt by the church, so I didn't turn to it. And I went to Arizona. It, you know, there's a whole other story with my brother and what happened with him too, and how he really fell, and he fell into prescription drugs like my father. In a sense, I think he was playing out what he had guilted my father for so much. I think he was trying to play it out and internalize it and understand it. And so he got really addicted to prescription pain meds. And then when those weren't available, he turned to heroin. And so it got really bad in my house. We had gotten an inheritance from my grandfather who passed away, and I gave thousands of dollars to my brother for his like, get rich quick schemes, and I didn't know he was using heroin. And then my mom, she really struggled. And she didn't want us to see her emotion. And so she kind of stayed private, and but she enabled my brother a lot because she didn't want to lose him the same way she lost my dad. And so my ex, my boyfriend, who I was considering was unfaithful but wasn't sure, he loved me, as much as an unrighteous man can love somebody. But he was with me a day that I found heroin in my brother's room, and he's the one who told me, like, Jamie, that's heroin. And I flushed it down the toilet, and I went downstairs when my brother and my mom came home to confront them and like tell my mom, like, this is what he's doing, and like we need to get him help and all this. And so I did that, and she knew that he was doing it, and she felt like she couldn't do anything. She was just allowing it. And I was so shocked, I felt betrayed. I felt like I just didn't know what to feel. And it turned on me, where I was the one at fault because I had thrown the drugs away, and now he was going to be sick, and now he was going to owe all this money because I did that. So I was the bad guy. And so it was like my boyfriend at the time, even though it was a bad relationship, he was there for me. And so I just cling to him. And when I did go home, I would like have to sleep with my purse because my brother would steal my money, and he had already pawned my jewelry, a lot of my diamond solitaire necklace and our grandfather clock, just anything he could get, he would pawn and sell for his money. And so it was really bad. And so I left with my ex to go to Arizona, and rumors of him cheating showed up there. Which I was like, okay, the common denominator is you. So we finally broke up. But I was stuck living with him because I couldn't afford a place on my own. And when I started to move on, he got really desperate. And I remember being out and him telling me like he was going to throw all my stuff out. And so I went back to the apartment, and he he got me inside and like started choking me, and that was the first time that he like ever like that I'd ever experienced like domestic abuse. And I was just praying like during that moment, but really seeing what he was capable of. And so I got a job. You know, I had an aesthetics license. I got it when I was 21 back in New York, and I had just transferred my license to Arizona, and was finally making okay amount of money. But before I actually went to Arizona, we had just gotten like AOL sign on, and I was like searching for, I think it was monster.com or something, for jobs. And I had saw something for Hawaii, and I was like, wow, what if I could do that? What if, what if I could go out there? And so it was in my mind already. And then in Arizona, I thought about it again, but it's such a hassle to transfer your license when you have a trade. To transfer it from one state to another, you have to get all this stuff approved and go through. But I was finally like, okay, I'm gonna try. But I wasn't sure yet. And I remember just going to Walmart randomly one day, and I bought something random that I didn't need. I went to the checkout, and this guy starts talking to me at the checkout, and he's like, yep, I'm packing. And I was like, okay, where are you going? And he's like, I got a job on a cruise ship and I'm moving to Hawaii. And that's exactly what I had been thinking about doing. And I was like, okay, okay, I guess I'm going, like if that's not like a sign for me in that place, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And my ex was still in my life. We had this codependent kind of desperate relationship. And he was so sorry for everything he had done. And, it was a bad situation. And so when I was going, I went there for an interview. I went to Hawaii for an interview, and then I came back, and I decided I was going to take the job. I got the job, and I was super excited, going to be an esthetician on a cruise ship. And it was like only supposed to be for like 3 or 4 months contract. So it was kind of my way of like ending the relationship smoothly. Like, oh, it's just, it's just for 3 months and I'll be back, it's kind of really codependent nature. And he, in our desperate, like kind of moments, he got me to miss my flight. And I was able to reschedule it to a later flight. But when I got out to Hawaii, it was nighttime, and I had to use the last of my money to buy a hotel room, and then to get a cab to the YWCA, the Women's YMCA out here in Hawaii. That's where they were going to put me up so that I could be trained during before getting on the ship. And I had nothing left. I had no money at all. And I remember getting on a bus, and it's like, I think at the time, I think it was like $2 if you're over 18 or something, and like $1 if you're under. And so I remember calling my girlfriend and being like, hey, can you just talk to me on the phone? Because I'm going to try to pretend that I'm younger than I am, and just be on the phone and just give him only $1 because that's all I had. I don't have anything else. I just had $1, and my family couldn't give me anything, so I was really grateful to stay at the Y, because like they would actually feed you. And I remember walking around in Waikiki and seeing these people who were like overweight and like full with bags and all this purchases, and they're in this beautiful state of Hawaii, and like there's this aloha there. You can really feel it, you can. But like these people, I would see them like yelling at each other, and like you always think, I had that mentality when I was younger, if I get here, then I'll be happy, and then I realized like these people are there and they're not happy. And so it was a deep revelation. And I felt like, because I had that connection to God, I was calling on him, and I really felt taken care of. I felt like I could do it. I felt like he was going to lead me, and he did. And I got the job on the cruise ship, and step by step, I kind of just went along with everything. And the cruise ship was also another, I definitely was still partying at that point, like still kind of like a lost person. And then after I got out of the cruise ship, I got a more like not managerial job in a spa, but like kind of a lead position where I was responsible for other people. And some things started to come up where one girl was starting to steal tip money from the other workers, and me too, but stealing tip money. And we brought her into the office, and I remember talking with her, and she just bursted out in tears, and she was like, I have 2 kids, you guys don't even have kids, and my life is so hard, and I see all this money coming in. And it really hit me like, wow, people really justify what they're doing, like it's wrong, but it's like these little steps that justify. And I started to see, how people were talking amongst themselves in the spa too, and like how it would be divisive. And in a managerial position, you kind of notice different things because you're supposed to, right? And so I had to like address that. And then my friend, who was the head manager, got fired. He got a job at a Aveda salon, and it had a tattoo shop in it. And so the tattoo shop owner was also the salon owner. And so he started working there, and he told me about this person, Sean. And he said, I think you guys would hit it off. Why don't you come get your hair done by me, and I'll introduce you to him. And so I did. I went and I got my hair done, and they're like, you should get your nose pierced. So I decided to go, okay, whatever, I'll do that. And the piercer was gone that day. So the only person that could pierce was Sean, the owner, right? And he at the time had these long dreads, like super long dreads, like a Rastafarian hat on, and like a septum piercing in here, right? And so I'm thinking like, okay, this guy's probably somebody who I could smoke pot with or something like that. And he pierces my nose, and he has a shirt on that says Jesus wept. And he tells me like, what's going to happen with piercing my nose, and how I might like let out a tear. And I was kind of like, I'm not going to cry. I can take the nose piercing, and so just reactionary after he pierces it, a tear comes down and he looks in my eyes and he wipes my tear away. And like, I was just like, this man is your husband. I don't know if it was like a knowing, spiritual knowing or something, but I felt that. I felt that. And it's funny because I told my girlfriend back home, like, I think I met my husband. And she's like, again? And I was like, no, I never said it like that before. But so I was pretty smitten with him. And then I found out that he was a Christian and that he didn't do drugs or alcohol or have sex, or even at that time, he wasn't drinking caffeine. So it was all these things that I was like, oh, like you're kind of an enigma, and he, before we even got in a relationship, told me the truth. He told me about his past. He was a recovering sex and love addict, and he'd be okay with me sharing that because he had a lot of things broken off of him in his life. And so he was able to tell me everything up front. And I was like, wow, like this person is truthful. And it's something that I'd really been searching for. I had that, like, I really want truth. And he was okay with like me not being into that, like he wasn't giving me a show, so my ex really gave me a show. And I had to make a choice. Like, do I want the things that he's expressed to me in my life? And he also talked about being equally yoked and wanting a Christian. And I was at the time pretty defensive, but I was still really searching for truth. I knew I didn't really have the answers. But he gave me a Bible, and the first thing that I read was in Proverbs. I opened up and, I think you did, I was just flipping through the pages and like wanting to read the shortest thing that I could read. And I read, life and death are in the power of the tongue. And those who love it will eat its fruit. And I was like, wow, that kind of goes along with some of the things I've been feeling about gossip. And then I read some more, and it was like, a man's ways seem right to him, but God judges the heart. And I was like, wow, wow, this is true. Like this is what I saw with my friend, like justifying stealing. And so it was like I started to go, oh my gosh, this is actually true. And then I saw the fruit in Sean's life, and it wasn't easy. At first I thought like, oh, I got this business owner, and like we're gonna, like, I'm gonna have money again. Stuff like that. And actually, like, on our first date, he paid for like our coffee drinks and brought like a lunch. And then we had spent so much time together that we wanted to have something to eat after. And he's like, oh, I actually don't have money for that. And so, because the business was really struggling. And so it was neat because it also allowed me to go, okay, I'm not choosing this for this purpose. I'm not going to choose this man because of anything. Like, he doesn't have anything. And that's like, I have to make a choice based on everything. And yeah. And he also told me he didn't want to kiss because he he wasn't like a strong enough man to like kiss and not go there. And so it was this really immensely purifying time for me. And I started to, like, I pulled him into sin. I definitely acted as the temptress, and pulled him into sexual relations. And then he had a conviction afterwards that was, you know, wanting to let go of that and knowing that God had something greater, through the letting go of that before marriage. And so, you know, we shut that part off in our relationship, and I got to see the blessing from that. Like I got to see, I just want to circle back because there was one time during sex that we had these closet mirrors that, like, I remember being so focused on myself and what I looked like and what I was doing, and how I would be perceived by him and what was the most sexy. And I, you know, wasn't present. And so this pruning process happened from letting go, and so our relationship became more purified. And then I remember reading my Bible, and I still hadn't given my life to Jesus, but I was being faithful. And I was reading some of these things that said, you know, where Jesus was like, you know, you're going to do even more greater things than me, you know, and nobody's good but me, or but the Father, and I'm not even good. And like some of these things. And so I started kind of twisting it in my head, and I was like, well, see, like even Jesus said this, you know, like, why do we need to give our life to Jesus? He said, we're all going to be part of the kingdom. You know, we're all like brothers and sisters, you know, And I felt pretty good about that conversation, and I went into the bathroom and need more water. Okay, come here. Mommy will get it in just a second. Okay, I'm gonna fill it right here. So I went into the bathroom, kind of thinking that you know, I had done a good job proving my point. There you go, baby. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I wasn't smiling. I saw my face smirk. And so I came out of that bathroom and I said, I need Jesus. Because I knew, like, I had never cast out demons. Like, it was like it hit me at that moment. Like, do you have the power to do this? And I gave my life to Jesus that night. And there was a lot of things in our relationship that I could see was being stripped from my spirit. It's like a pruning process. So after that time, I really submitted, in a sense, to God's plan and to Sean in a big sense. And we had a 3-year relationship before we got married, and we were holding out from sex. And so it was like I had to face rejection, you know, like, am I not good enough for him to propose? But he really wanted confirmation from God before he did. And through this process, I got to see how much my identity was really wrapped with my sexual identity and my the weight that I tried to put on my attractiveness or trying to be attractive to get worth. I got to see all that, and I got to see how God was stripping it from me. Because at first you think, you're like, oh, he has all these rules, like there's all these commandments and rules, but like, like, I don't know, there's resistance. You don't understand the rules or why they're in place. And then I started to realize, like, oh, it's for protection, and it's for like unburdening my spirit. And so I really got to see that. And I remember one moment in particular. I had gotten really dolled up, like super dolled up. And I went over to Sean's house, and like it was like kind of towards the end of the 3 years before he had proposed. And I was really like kind of expecting him to be like, wow, or something, but he actually didn't. And usually he is pretty complimentive, but I didn't even think he like said anything that night. And I left pretty upset, and I was like, see, Lord, like I tried my best and it still wasn't good enough. And like at that very moment, I heard this like really calming, and it said, Jamie, that's not your best. Your best is when you're with me. And there was like this whole identity, like that I had struggled so hard, this like kind of mask that I had put my my strength in started to come off. And so it transformed me. And I eventually, he did propose, and we got married, and God blessed us in that. And then he didn't want to have children. He did want to have children before we got married, but then he didn't, because it was so much responsibility in the world, just how it was and is. But then there was this pruning that was happening for me in that time too. So I got to see also how the timing that God has in mind is so powerful. The way that he prunes is so gentle, like, and so I was pretty selfish still, and God had to strip me of that, because when he finally was like, okay, your dream is not going away, and I will honor you in that too. And we started like just seeing what happens. And we got pregnant. Well, we did get pregnant before, and that was like an accident. And he was, I had a miscarriage, and he was even more like diligent about not wanting to become pregnant after that. So, so I had some more years of really like kind of letting go of the desires of my heart, and surrendering them. But then we were blessed with a little baby boy, and then his sister. But when my son was 7 months old, we had a big fire in the building that we lived in. So this was in the news and everything. It was a huge fire. And luckily, my husband was at work that day, and me and my son were out in Waikiki walking around. And so our cat was there, though. Our cat was in the building. And so when it happened, it was, Sean thought we were there, and then, realized we weren't. But it was in the unit right above and next to us. So you could, like, the smoke was just filling our whole unit. And all of our stuff got condemned. So there was asbestos in the smoke, and there was water damage, like significant water damage. So Sean got to go in the unit quickly, I think a couple days after, and he got to pull out a couple things that were okay. My our birth certificates and stuff like that. But then it was condemned, and we lost everything. But it was another process, I think, of God really showing like how he shows up and what he can do for you when you don't have anything. And so I wasn't too distraught over my stuff. I was very happy that my cat survived. My cat was alive. And I don't think that I wasn't in a space where I could be really grateful. Like I was grateful for all my friends and people that showed up, and a lot of you guys showed up during that time for me, and I was very thankful, but I wish I would have done more. But I was in such like survival mode at that time with my baby, and I had to face all these like fears of like, I had him in this little bubble for that first like 7 months of his life. He was in this bubble and I was really protecting him. And then it was like, we are living in a place with 4 other people, and they always have visitors and they don't take off their shoes, and my baby's on the floor. And like, so it was like all this like, okay, I have to let go of these worries, and be diligent too, and all of that. But yeah, it was another pruning process for me of like having to let go a little bit more. And since then, it's like God has really been showing me my heart through parenting and through like kind of reforming how I'm speaking and what I'm doing. And kids are such a blessing, and they're also like, you don't live for yourself anymore. It's like the epitome of the lesson of sacrifice, not full bodily sacrifice like Jesus, but like sacrifice, real sacrifice, having to live every day for somebody else and their needs. And so it's been really beautiful thing for me, really taught me a lot with raising kids. And then I wanted to finish with like how the pandemic has also shaped me, because I think it has done so much. I've taken a lot of lessons out of it for me. Like I remember being so upset, after the first shutdown. They had they had closed the parks, and we live in the city, and I had 2 kids now at that time. And so when they opened it, they just said 1 person only, like no families, just a single person can go to the park or the beach or wherever. And I remember posting something like F this, and I posted that article like on Facebook or something. And I got to see that my approach was not filled with fruit, and it didn't bear fruit out of that. I actually lost like some friends from that. And God really like pointed me to some scriptures after that showed about, I'm gonna look it up because I did write it down. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. And so I really got convicted. You know, I love how God convicts. And like, there was also, but God has revealed it to us by this. Oh, wait, no. It was something about great patience and all that, bringing understanding. Your toe. Oh.
Yeah, it has a boo-boo on it.
Oh. But the other day, I love that she's here, because the other day, I saw my husband wipe a tear from her eyes, and it just like, I was just connected so much to when he wiped the tear from my eyes. It's just so beautiful to see that, you know, how God redeems. And also I wanted to, I had brought up something before we got married. I went to see a Christian counselor that really helped me with how I was perceiving life. You know, I shared that moment about, you know, when my father came home from the hospital and not telling him I believed in him. And so I carried around this immense guilt of like wanting, like, I have to tell everybody I believe in them. And that was used against me in life, where it was like a burden, you know. And so I went to a counselor that really helped me clear that. And I was always waiting for the other shoe, like the ball to drop at that point in my life, right before we got married, where I was like so happy that everything was going on, and so thrilled about everything. My dreams were like coming true, but I was like always waiting, like what was around the corner, what was going to take this goodness from me, because that's what I had experienced. I had experienced this good, in a sense, life being stripped away. And so I was expecting it. I was like expecting who's going to die, what's going to happen, you know. And my counselor really, she really helped me to deal with that and go, so what? So what if something does happen? Does that mean that you got to strip the joy away from this moment right now? You can't celebrate it because of like what might happen. And it was so freeing to me, because I was just like, wow, yeah, like, why am I like, it has not happened yet. So if it does happen, we'll deal with it when it happens. But if it doesn't, you know, don't let it. And she actually gave me homework. And it was when I tried on my wedding dress and invited you guys all over to my place. That was part of my homework, of like working on celebrating and being joyous, like, and inviting people into the celebratory times. And it was embarrassing for me actually at first to like to invite you guys to do that. But I'm so glad I did, because it's one of my most precious memories. And yeah. And this past year, God has really been like not only correcting me, but like opening my eyes more to understanding, and like letting me see the fire in his eyes. And like my understanding has been increasing, and I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed. Like, I wanted to end my testimony with this. Let Almighty God be your gold, and let him be your silver, piled high for you. Then you will always trust in God and find that he is the source of your joy. can just let them out.